I want to now move on in the interests of time and talk a little bit about attention. In the video, you heard this quote from William James. This is really one of my all-time favorite quotes in the biobehavioral sciences. And when William James said an education which should improve this faculty, talking about attention, would be the education par excellence, those italics are in the original William James. And the last sentence, which I didn't mention on the video, I'll read to you. He said, "It is easier to define this ideal than to give practical directions for bringing it about." I think if William James had more familiarity with the contemplative traditions, he would have instantaneously seen that these are strategies that can be used to educate attention. So let me just give you one little snippet of evidence for this. Before I do that, let me just remind you that one of the important behavioral signs of inattention is reaction time variability. It's a good behavioral metric that reflects mind wandering. And so these are response time distributions. They're histograms. And what you see here is that I've circled is a distribution for a group of children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and in blue is circled age-matched controls. And what you can see is that the response time distribution for controls is much tighter. And it simply means their reaction time is less variable. And so we use this metric in a selective attention task where we look longitudinally over the course of 3 months of mindfulness meditation training to ascertain whether there are behavioral changes of this sort and whether there are corresponding changes in the brain that are associated with these behavioral changes. And so this is work, again, of Antoine Lutz, a scientist in our lab. And if you just look at the right-hand bars here, practitioners are those who went through 3 months of mindfulness training. And the light bar is time 1 before the training. The dark bar is after 3 months of training. And these are age and gender match controls who did 1 week of training between these 2 assessments that were 3 months apart. And what the metric is here is the standard deviation of reaction time. So this is a measure of reaction time variability. Lower numbers mean less variable, smaller standard deviation. And so what you can see is that the meditators who went through 3 months of training show a very significant reduction in reaction time variability, whereas the controls are showing no significant difference between time 1 and time 2. We measured various parameters of brain electrical activity, and particularly looking at phase locking of the external stimulus to oscillatory rhythms that we record from the scalp surface. And I, again, won't go through all the details. These are published data. But what we see is that there are changes in frontal phase locking such that the meditators are showing increased phase locking after 3 months of practice. And that increased phase locking, which is displayed on the ordinate here, is associated with a reduction in reaction time variability, meaning that reaction time becomes less variable. And this is one of many, many studies now which suggest that there are measurable changes on certain parameters of attention which can be improved through these simple practices of mindfulness meditation.